Cool. So I'm going to do a quick overview. So give you a bit of background. My role. So I'm a technical specialist. Been at Microsoft 8 years. I work with UK enterprise customers. So some of you might be that. Or you might be unlucky enough to do work that, but usually in the data and AI field, and I specialize in Power BI, Fabric, done previously SQL Server, but I try and help unblock customers. So usually it's a pre-sales role. We talk to customers about, what they're trying to do, help them move so that you can start adopting those things. Last year, Microsoft changes roles every year. I was what we call the cloud solution architect. Inside Microsoft, that means totally different things. David over here, who's one of my colleagues, is a cloud solution architect. The same. We do very similar roles, but yeah, it's interesting. And obviously, I've got the pleasure of working with Chris on a lot of our bigger customers and things like that. So it's great to have Chris here as well. I run the Manchester Data Platform user group as well. So part of what I try and do, obviously data platform is slightly different from the Power BI side. So got mixed emotions because I should be really doing talks at that one, but Power BI is where I go at the moment. You can find me on these places as well. And now my clicker's not working. Alex broken my clicker. All right. Okay, let's try again. So I tried to do this talk before Christmas. Unfortunately, Fabric wasn't GA and many customers hadn't been using it. I'm going to want a big show of hands. Is anyone using Fabric in GA at the moment? Chris will buy you a beer afterwards if he can talk to you. So seek out Chris. So he's looking. So yeah. Similarly in my role, I've been working with customers when they started using Fabric. Or previously had Power BI. It's then how do we get people to get over the initial questions and things like that. So what I'm going to share as part of mine. Chris is going to a more technical one. I'm trying not to do death by PowerPoint, but there's going to be a lot of chatting, but I'll try not to refer to the slides. But it's more about feedback from customers I've been working with about what they've learned, sort of the questions they've been asking all the time. And this is a bit of a summary. So there's a lot of customers talking about Fabric, and for me that's a very high level at the moment. So I've been doing lots of nice sizzle intros and things like that about what Fabric is, talking about how that is, what Copilot is, and we'll come on to that in a bit, what that means for you and things like that. If you've seen Microsoft, we've probably got 400 Copilots at the moment. Not really, there's quite a number. And whenever someone says we'd like to hear about the Copilot, always have to prefix that with which Copilot do you talk about? Is it the Windows one? Is it the GitHub one? We'll talk about the Fabric one, and Fabric really hasn't got one Copilot. It's probably got experiences inside of it that bring things together. Cost model. So obviously people have been talking about Fabric. It's hopefully easier for you to go and do flexibility around costing and things like that. So that's one of the things that customers have started talking about and understanding that. Then leads them into, well, how do we do cost it? But they're looking at it. It might be an easier way for them to cost some of those to start smaller than when they've been using Power BI Premium previously. And then getting a trial capacity set up and how you go and do that. So things are changing with the trial capacities at the moment. So if people have been using that, you should see your ticker starting to come down. So that might be a bit of a shock for a few of you that the ticker has now started. There was a bit of a, debate about when it should start and things like that. But if you haven't started the trial, you've got 60 days when you do start it to play with it. And the happy path. So I don't know if you've heard of this phrase. There are 4 happy paths when Fabric was announced. There is one for the Lakehouse experience, one for the data warehouse, one for the real-time analytics, and one for the data science. These are great ways for you to get started with keep saying Power BI with Fabric, and gives you a way to sort of go through it and understand what Fabric is before you go what we call off the happy path, and you start to find out things that may be different than what you thought. So that, and then some of the challenges, customers, lots of conversations about Fabric. So that's probably me saying that. I've not stopped talking about Fabric for the last 6 months. I'm sure other people have seen this, that everyone wants to talk about it. It's 3 topics at the moment inside Microsoft. It's Fabric, Gen AI, so how you do ChatGPT, OpenAI sorts of things, and there's a purview conversation that gets lost a little bit, and I'm not going to talk about that. But yeah, and then how does it work with your existing investments? So that's always a big one. So, if you've already got a lake house, how do you use Fabric with that? Is there competing sorts of things if you've got things around that? If you've got on-prem, how do you start using Fabric and things like that? Roadmap on GA functionality. Always ask Chris though. So if you've got any questions about the roadmap, no, but we'll talk a bit about that. Understand the cost model. Although I said it's easier, there'll be some bits that well, how do you actually price this out now? What is there? And I've got a slide on how that, and obviously the patterns and practices. I will say patterns and practices are coming. There's a lot of stuff online. I would say we're looking for feedback from customers, how you're using it. So then that goes into how we can then best help customers move it forward. So if you haven't seen, just to set the level set, Fabric. So who hasn't seen Fabric? Or can I skip over this slide? 1, 2. Don't please put your hand up. It's not a test or anything like that. So to understand what Fabric is, it's very much what I call Power BI plus plus. Or Power BI Premium plus plus. It's a SaaS version of a lot of our data platforms. So if you've previously used Data Factory or Synapse Data Warehouse or some of the more real-time sort of PaaS services, this is now a SaaS service. So I'm going to skip over this quickly. There are lots of YouTubes online to talk about it, but to sort of give you a level set, there's a lot of these experiences along the top that you can go and use. We've got the One Lake, which is your storage layer. So if you're used to using Azure Data Lake Storage, Gen 2 sort of folder structures, One Lake is just one big one of those, and under there we're managing that all for you. And then you've got Purview and a lot of other integrations, but I'm going to skip over that because it's obviously, I think there's something. And within that, then you've got personas or different things. So each of these experiences, so Power BI, for example, or Data Factory. Previously, when you went into Power BI, now in the bottom left, if you've got Fabric enabled inside your tenant, you will see this new little switcher that allows you to go and do these experiences. So, within the one UI, you can go and get Fabric. So that's one of the selling points, rather than jumping into lots of different applications previously. So if you were doing Data Factory, you go into one UI. If you're doing Synapse, you go into a different one. And for Power BI, have another one. Now it's one unified interface for all these experiences. And there's a new one down here called Data Activator, which we can have a little chat about, but that's a real-time alerting. So Power BI didn't really have a great alerting experience previously before. Data Activator is your solution around that if you're looking for it. There is a competing talk online at the moment with one of our product team at the moment talking about a Data Activator. Don't go and look at that, stay here. So one of the ones I've called out is what is in GA. I'm not whether this is up to date or the most recent, but we announced GA for Fabric back in November. So that meant all these things on the left-hand side are now GA. But if you're used to Power BI, there's monthly releases and things like that. I would say there's probably intra-week releases on some things as well for bits, but you've got to get used to that. A lot of Fabric is GA'd, but there are some bits that are still to be delivered. So, when I first started out in IT, I had SQL Server. You had 6 years to learn, a topic and then get your head around it. And then a new version of SQL Server would come and then you go and learn that again. It's very different with the Power BI world and the SaaS world. You can see there are changes being dropped every month. And Fabric is even bigger now. So if, do feel a little bit for our customers who have multiple suppliers and with the cloud that you've got quite a lot of changes happening at the same time. So you will see that you'll get data, you'll get sort of Power BI releases in there, but you'll also get some of the data engineering changes. So you're going to have to keep on top of that. There's a really good blog and I've referenced that at the end to sort of give you places to go and do it. Public preview. So these are things that everyone should be going and seeing. So at the moment, we've got Copilot. So inside Fabric. So if you've not tried that, you can go and enable that inside your tenant. It's free and inverted commas. There are some caveats around that. There's obviously Fabric with Purview and Data Catalog. So that's our data governance tool. And then we've got private preview. So this is where we go to select customers and ask them to try out features, give us feedback on them. So the big one on that one is mirroring. And I've got a slide and we'll talk about that and what's coming with that. And then we've obviously got the roadmap. These are items that the engineering team are looking to deliver. So if you're used to the Power BI roadmap, you'll see that they do 6 months in advance. They try and give you that all online. And I'm still waiting for Alex Powers to build a nice report that puts all of that. But if you've seen the Power BI one, there's usually a Power BI report that breaks down. You can see month by month what's coming with nice links to the docs to say, well, what is that feature? And you'll see, and I think they're in planning for the next 6 months after March. So we've got the roadmap up to March, and then there'll be a new roadmap for the next 6 months coming. So be prepared for a big drop and what's coming in that. If you looked at the roadmap at the moment, you would probably a big long list, which is quite difficult to sort of take in. I did find a gentleman put quite a nice view of how the roadmap was broken down, what was coming. This looked a little bit better for me. I do have a reference. I've referenced the guy down there. Hopefully he's not in the room, but I have stolen his graphic as a way, and that looked quite good as a way of describing it. Some of the questions I get, so jumping right into how do you understand what Fabric is if you're used to a Power BI world. These are sort of some of the basics and sort of building blocks. So hopefully this is useful. It may be for some people you already know this, but it sort of helped me when I'm talking to customers, etc. That obviously Fabric is based on Power BI, and under that Power BI was under the Office 365 tenant. So whether you did or didn't know that, you have this tenant, and under there Office 365, and under that you'll get Power BI and the Fabric. I see Power BI and Fabric now the same thing in a way. Chris, you can tell me whether there's pretty much the same under the hood. It's just within the tenant when you enable it or not for certain features. And under that is the one lake, and then you've got domains, which is optional for you to go and implement. And then under that is workspaces, which if you've done Power BI before, it will be very familiar how this set up, but workspaces can hold a lot more around the experiences. You only ever have one lake, one lake, get that right, within your Fabric tenant. So that's, sort of things that you can have multiple domains. I don't know, has anyone played with the domains yet and seen how they work? Yeah, little Johnny at the back, which is not surprising. But domains helps you separate business areas out and things like that. And you can then logically group some of your workspaces into sales and things like that. So it makes it easier for you to do that. So my other notes on the other side, got a slide on how you purchase it and licensing, but effectively you can, if you've got Power BI Premium already, you can go and turn on Fabric for that, or it will have turned itself on automatically at some point last year. But you can get Fabric as part of your Power BI Premium capacity, so your P1 capacities and above, or you can go onto the Azure portal and buy the Fabric SKUs, which are called F SKUs, but they started a lot lower. So a P1 on a Power BI Premium is equal to an F64 SKU, and this 64 is about compute unit. But in Azure, you can go and buy what we call an F2, so it starts a lot smaller, and that means that you can obviously try some of these things. The F64 is important for this because that gives you the same capabilities as a Power BI Premium. So we've got pro users here, only pro users, or people with Power BI Premium and Pro as well. Yeah. 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 Yeah, and we'll talk a bit about how you do your capacities, but you can go, in the Power BI world, you can have a pro license, and that allows you to be. So if I'm sharing a report with Chris in a pro world, Chris needs a pro license, and I need a pro license to share with Chris, or to develop the report and then share it so Chris can open it. In a premium world, obviously, you buy the premium capacity, which is a very large and more expensive version. But with that, you get all your consumers included with that pricing. So that means that you don't have to have that pro license for your consumers, so you can share it wider externally and things like that as well around that. So does that all make sense? Hopefully people have got that. So the F64 in the Fabric world gives you that. But you can obviously start at an F2 and have pro licenses and have Power BI artifacts in there. So an F2 capacity, off the top of my head, I'm going to talk retail prices. People will get discounts depending on how they go and just negotiate with their Microsoft teams. Start at $300 per month. And then if you buy a reservation of that, like your premium capacities for 12 months, you can get it for about 40% less, $200 per month. So if you're used to the premium capacity prices, which are in the $5,000 range per month, obviously you can see Fabric is probably a lot simpler to go and do if you want to try this out, and you get all of those things. So the data factory, the data engineering, the lake house, and the data warehouse experience, all as part of your F2. You won't be able to eat the internet with that. So don't please, say for $300, I'm going to download the internet, put it all on there and expect it to run very fast and have lots of capacity at the back of it. Obviously, you will need to control that. And this is some of the conversations that we start to have. But hopefully this gives you an idea of that. So I would say your Power BI administrator or their Fabric administrator should be your best friend. Do we have Power BI administrators in the room? You are probably the most important person in that company at the moment, and everyone else around you, go and find out who that Power BI administrator is. If you didn't know who they are, make sure they're your best friend, because they can turn on features and do things for you. So I would say they're usually in IT, and they're usually a part of the office team, things like that. So, I'm not saying that's always an easy thing, but, that's the person that you need to go and find. Licensing. So just to give you, to bring this out, if you're on a PaaS solution already, like with Azure Synapse, don't worry, that's not going away. We're not deprecating it. We've not announced that anytime soon or anything like that, from what I'm aware. And even if it was, it would be 10 years before it was deprecated. So you've got plenty of time to look at that if it was. So Ian is not announcing that PaaS Synapse is going away. But within there, as we said, you've got the premium capacity, you can go and get Fabric, but you can then, within that, you can do the pay as you go, which is obviously 40% more, or you can do the monthly commit 1-year reservation, which then brings the pricing down. Or you've still got your Power BI at the top. So you've still got Power BI Pro, Power BI Premium, Power BI Embedded, and Power BI Premium per user as well. So those are all still available. So when I explain to customers, there's 2 costs now, off the back of this. One is a monetary cost, and another one is these capacity costs. So this is important. So people who are buying Fabric now, if they're buying the SKUs, you go and buy a compute unit, the compute part. So there's an underlying part on the storage, but there's also the compute. The storage, I say, is cheap, and that's obviously easy for a Microsoft person to say that, but it's like ADLS Gen 2 pricing, so it's 0.0023 pence per gigabyte per month. So obviously that is your storage layer, how much you're paying on a monthly bit, and the compute is the more expensive bit. So that's the, if you start an F2, that's the $300 per month, depending on what you do. So that's the capacity cost to go and actually run Fabric. What I then have to explain to customers, there's these CU. So if you buy a CU, if you start running a data fabric, a data factory job, that draws down from that capacity. So internally, now previously when you had a Power BI Premium, you would just have all your Power BI things. And yeah, obviously that capacity would do a certain amount. Now you maybe have to think about, well, other things that are going to be running on that capacity as well. And you need to understand their costs and how much they do. If you've got a Power BI Premium capacity and there's lots of headroom in there, you may be able to go and run some other bits. And I'll come to how you look at this. So I would say admin and governance becomes really important for people who are going to look at Fabric going forward. So if you haven't got this in Power BI, I would say it's one of the first things that you should go and do, or speak to your Power BI administrator how you can go and do it. So this is 2 bits. So for me, Fabric now, there's 2 costs. There's the monetary cost, but there's also the compute cost that you'll need to think about when you're running Fabric. Does that make sense? Yeah, everyone happy? Everyone all right with that? Okay. So some fundamental stuff on that, obviously mentioned again, customers are talking about trials. They've started counting down. So if you've started, if you've got a trial, the numbers are starting to come down. I think about the 16th of January, it kicked in. So you've got 6th of January minus whatever today's date is. I know I've got a trial and it seems to have only about 15 days left. I'm not sure how that man managed to do that. You can still start trials if you want to, but you'll just get 60 days to try Fabric if you want to go and try it within your tenant. Obviously, the Power BI admins, as I said, if you want to turn things on, like the Copilot experience and some of the other bits, you need to go into the tenant settings to go and do that. You may be a capacity admin, which is a lower than the Power BI admin. You'll need to get, find that person above to actually go and turn some of the Fabric sort of features on if you need them. The Copilot preview, so that's publicly available now. So I don't know, anyone tried the Copilot? Anyone? No? No? Wow. Okay. So you haven't tried the one inside Fabric? No. So Johnny's tried it, so there we go. But inside there is a Power BI one. There's a sizzle video that came out at, or what we called internally as the sizzle video, the marketing video for Copilot. So it helps you go and build Power BI reports. But there's one for Data Factory to go and build pipelines. There's one to help you with your Spark notebooks to help you go and do some of your data science, things like that. So there are different features. There's also the DAX Copilot as well to help you go and build DAX. If you hate building DAX, which I do, then you've got the DAX Copilot to help you go and build the DAX around that. What I will say, you need a paid for capacity for that. So going back to the original things, you need a P1 that's Fabric enabled, or you need an F64 or above SKU to run the Copilot. So it's in preview at the moment. So if you want to enable that and use it, you need one of those. You can't do it on a trial. So just to make you aware of that, there's some things that people are there. And as I've said, there's multiple experience inside of that. There's some blogs. I've got links to them if people need them. So governance and adoption. So I always put this in there, and I did this when I was doing Power BI. If you've not seen the adoption roadmap, which has now been renamed to the Fabric, so it's getting more information put inside of it. Definite read. Maybe to put you to sleep. There are a lot of documents in there if you're struggling, but it's definitely a worth a read that you need to go and do. And there are 10 different things inside of that, like setting up, talks about your data culture inside your company. One of the ones for me is the governance piece and the center of excellence. So do people have center of excellence or center of enablements in their companies at the moment? Yes, sort of. Unofficially, maybe champions of things. It's on the roadmap. Yeah, but it's something that I think, it's something that's really important. I like to talk passionately about this. It's one of my areas that I think is really important when you're adopting Power BI, is getting this set up and understanding how you should do it, because it helps you adopt Power BI in a good way. So it helps you understand, your usage, understands what people are using, what, features, sets up champions and sets you up for success, and that's, great for Microsoft, but it's also hopefully good for you. If you're not using the tool correctly, or you need some help, or you don't understand what's going on inside your tenant, then obviously that leads to a bad performance. And then obviously people won't use the reports that you're building and things like that. So definitely the governance piece there. And it talks about maturity levels and things like that. So everyone would love to be level 400. You're not going to be that. I don't think I've seen any company that's level 400 straight away. And this is a continuous thing of improvement. You will look at these 10 different things. You will pick out areas and say, these are important for the company right now. And then you will say, these are my North Stars that I'm going to go and try and get to. And then your next quarter, you may review again and say, right, our things have changed. We think this is important now. So, I'm saying this is alongside your day job, but I think it's important that if you get this right, it does help, get a good experience from the Power BI, and then for the users and how you're going to adopt it around that. Is anyone put this in, seen it, done it? No? And the other one that goes alongside this, if you've not seen, is the implementation documentation. So if you've not met Matthew, Matthew's an amazing bloke. He works alongside Chris. Again, one of the people I love speaking with or listening to speak to. Matthew has got a great YouTube channel. He's talking about being a program manager in Microsoft at the moment. So, but he helped build some of the implementation planning and the adoption roadmap with Melissa Coates. I think Matthew and Melissa have both slightly stepped away from this now. Melissa's retired. She's retired to Portugal. I got lucky enough to see Matthew and Melissa in Dublin. I think they did their last ever one together over there. So I was quite lucky to go and see them do that. But other people have taken over. So I think, is it Kurt Bueller has taken over as one of the people, and then there's a couple of other people that are sort of taking on this work. So definitely, I would read this document. Even if you've already implemented Power BI, there's some really good sort of things in there. How you set up workspaces and things like that. How you do Power BI implementations from quite small companies to quite large enterprises and things like that. So those two documentations go hand in hand for me. And Matthew obviously is a very engaging speaker. You might know him as the guy with the swords. He has a lot of swords. Yeah, there's a story behind that, but definitely a good one. He's usually at SQL bits or things like that. We've seen him, so very good speaker. How do you go and do some of this adoption? So I don't know if people have got any of this already. So there's the admin. There's been recently, last year, we put out the admin monitoring for tenant admins. People seen that? You can turn it on. So again, I know there was only a few of there are actually Power BI administrators, but there's a report now that the tenant admins can go and see how things are going. If you've not heard of Rui's now inside Microsoft. He put together a GitHub repository about the Power BI monitor. Again, another thing that people do. So if you haven't got your auditing and your setup, Rui's GitHub sort of project is free and available. Go and download it, understand it. It's got really good things to start you getting your audit logs out, putting them all in one place. There's also got a solution for the gateway logs as well to go and get all of that information. That's good. Rui is now on the pro developer experiences corp engineering team, so he's pushing this internally, how people go and do it. So used to work on Chris's team. You let him go, Chris, but he moved on. But yeah, he's got a really good GitHub. He's done some YouTubes. Again, a great person to listen to about how you go and do this. And then at the bottom, there's if you've got Power BI Premium, there's the Capacity Metrics app. This was just for Power BI. It's now for Fabric. If you haven't updated it recently, update it to the Fabric Capacity Metrics app, because it does need to pick up some new things around that. But this tells you what's going on inside your tenant. This is important for you to be planning. Have you got reports that are running? If you are the center of excellence that you take on and look at it, has somebody built a report that's now become the center of your world and everyone relies on it? You can go and find it. If you've got this information, you can, the central logs only hold data for 30 days and then it's cleared down and things like that for PII and storage and things like that. From our side, you can go and archive that, put it into a data warehouse, go and use it. And then over time, you can build out, Power BI reports to say how well has our usage changed and things like that. Really important to go and do, because then you can see which reports are not being used, so you can delete them and then hopefully free up some capacity. But also, reports that may be coming up that maybe you should be looking at. And there's a phrase that they use internally is about discipline at the core and flexibility at the edge. It's making this discipline that people are building the right reports well, but you've got the flexibility of the self-serve that you can go and use the data, centralized data sets and things like that to go and build your reports on top of it. How am I doing for time? Okay. Some of the other things that we've picked up when we're talking to customers, how do you set up your workspaces? So with Power BI, you had workspaces and they just had reports and your data sets inside them. With Fabric going forward, workspaces are going to come a little bit more busy. And if you've seen Fabric, inside of there, you can have you can have lake houses, you can have data warehouses, you can have the data activator reflexes, which are the alerting side of this. So it becomes quite complicated. Your workspaces come quite a lot of information in there. So it's how you set those up. some of the things when we talk about center of excellence is, do you split your data sets off into one workspace and then you have your reports in another one that people then look into and, do that? And I can see the gentleman there going, that's it. But it's different in every company. You will find that maybe you break it down by business areas and things like that, and then it becomes a bit of planning. Again, probably going to the agile principle, try it, see what works for you, because for every customer that I speak to, it's going to be different because you know your business best. Microsoft can give you these best practices or what other customers are doing, but you're going to have to try it and work out what works for you. You may do it wrong to start with, but if you learn quickly and then sort of change it, it should, catch up there without making too many. And don't be frightened to try these things. I think a lot of people are, get paralyzed by making a decision. Go and try it, work out what's this, try it 2 different ways, see which works for you. And it might be that you have a bit of both of whatever you choose. What else did we put on here? Obviously, DevOps is going to become a bit better. I know Power BI didn't have a great DevOps experience, but Rui, who we talked before, he brought in the pro developer experience for the desktop. So if people haven't seen he did a talk a couple of months ago, I think, at this user group, or somebody, I can't remember if you or somebody did the Power BI projects where you can separate now at the PBIX level. You can have the report canvas and also the semantic model, which was the data set. If you haven't seen that change, you can now have those and you can start to do some CI/CD. And in Fabric at the workspace level, we've got Git integration at that. I think it's the Power BI artifact and some of the notebooks that have got integration, so we don't have the lake house and some of the other artifacts, but they are coming on the roadmap. So ultimately, Fabric will have full CI/CD end to end. It's good that Power BI has got it. If you're we're in the Power BI user group, so hopefully you've started to see that, and the DevOps and the Timsdale sort of changes that are coming as well. So look out for those. Also, as I said, it's SaaS. Obviously, when you're in an on-prem world, you probably had some test servers that were maybe less than production and things like that. You're now moving to a SaaS world. Is everything the same? Are you going to have test servers and production servers exactly the same? So these are some of the questions that we get about how do I provision some of this? Because obviously, do you put everything on your production because the performance is, on a SaaS service should be the same from one workspace to the other and things like that? Do I go and buy smaller capacities to go and do my testing and things like that to separate that away from production? So these are some of the things. I don't have all the answers for you, but I'm saying these are definitely some of the questions that people are asking when they're using Fabric and understand how you set that up. So these are things you're going to have to work about. How are you splitting your dev, test and prod? Is it going to be on the same capacity? Are you going to break it across multiple capacities? Obviously, you've now got the ability to spin up an F2 as a pay-as-you-go. And one of the things I didn't mention, all a pay-as-you-go, you can stop and start those. So although you may be paying $300 a month rather than the reservation, you can stop and start that. So in the day, you could run a test on a smaller capacity and then stop it to save yourself some money over the pay-go. So it could work out cheaper than buying a reservation. I'm sure the salespeople I work with won't be happy with me telling you that as a way of doing things. But it is that whole, how do you set the dev, test and prod up? Deploying artifacts, obviously I talked a bit about the pro developer versus the data engineers. Do we have data engineers here who are usually using Spark notebooks and things like that? Obviously, Fabric's going to be a bit of a change for you. You can have a few less, bells and whistles that you can change inside it, but it might make your job a little bit easier that you haven't got to set up VNets and things like that. So, that's going to be the balance. So for the area I work in, public sector, for local governments or central governments, they can see it as a way that they may not have had those large engineering teams and the ability to go and do that. So they can try out now Fabric without having to worry about going getting that skill set in, which they may not have been able to get initially. They can try Fabric out because Microsoft is managing under the hood some of the things that they're. Obviously, that might be a bit scary for a few of you, saying, "Well, Microsoft, go and worry about this for us." But hopefully, we can talk you around it. I've got some slides further on why that you can work on that. Obviously, Power BI admin portal settings are where a lot of the things. Semantic link, I'll just talk about that if you've not seen this. Something to go and, I would say Google it because everyone will use Google. I should say Bing. Go and use your search engine of choice to go and find that. But semantic link is an important one people have talked about. This is the ability for your data scientists to use your centralized data sets or your semantic models within their notebooks and things like that. So you're able to share your measures and things that you've built into your semantic model, that they can use that within their notebooks and then go and build Power BI reports. It's a really powerful thing that we're seeing people starting to use and talk about. Other topics, data ingestion. So with Fabric, there's a few different ways, and we're going to break those down. So we've got data factory, shortcuts, mirroring, Databricks, interesting one. An existing investment. So, you know, if you've got, who's got Databricks here already? Got two at the back, a few more putting their hands up. The Databricks is still, you know, first party with Microsoft. It's still got a great experience. You know, if you want more of that engineering capacity and things like that, using Unity Catalog, you've got that in place. Fabric works alongside that. So, you know, you're going to see a lot of articles around how you use Fabric and Databricks together. You know, what's that? The medallion architecture, which is under the Lakehouse, how you do that. So the bronze, silver, and gold. If you're like me, very old and used to do SQL Server development where you had your raw and, or, you know, you extract into different layers within inside that. 10 minutes. Oh my God, I need to rush. I'm going to get into trouble here. We're going to jump through that. So again, yes, I'll put that up there. But we're still friends. Some people might have said we're not. Lakehouse scenario. So how do you get data in? So you can use shortcuts. So this is like a pattern for using this in there. So this is one of the happy paths. You can see you can either use shortcut enables, and I've got a slide on what shortcuts are, or you can use Data Factory to use unstructured and structured data and bring it in, and then use the Lakehouse. And then sort of the business intelligence with Power BI to display it, or use the SQL endpoint for other things to attach to that. So these are patterns in the happy paths that we can go through. Shortcut, this is a way you can virtualize data from other places. So if you've got, like in this one, data in, you know, God forbid, in other clouds, why would you ever do that? Or somewhere else. Google or Amazon, you could bring that into the one lake. We don't copy the data in. It's a virtualization layer over the top. It's like a shortcut on your desktop. We reference that data, and we do some very clever things to make sure that you're not copying the data all over the place, but the one lake is aware of it. So at the moment, so you can go and grab them, short of time. Got mirroring. Anyone know CDC or change data capture that was in SQL Server? Mirroring's like CDC under the hood. So this is, if you actually want to copy the data in, Fabric can then create the CDC for you and manage it for you. So rather than you have to worry about it, mirroring is doing that. We've got that in private preview for Cosmos DB, SQL DB, and Snowflake as well. So that's interesting if you're on that private preview. Also, if you've used Synapse, we can bring Dataverse data into Fabric as well. So there's Synapse link. So part of that. This is an end-to-end analytics pattern. One of my colleagues, what we call a global black belt, Andreas, I've got a link in the slides. He put together this pattern. He's just released a YouTube on LinkedIn. If you look up Andreas, he talks a lot about patterns and practices in Fabric. And this is an end-to-end. So using the bronze, silver, and gold. So this is the Lakehouse. I'm sort of doing this. So this would be sort of your raw layer. And then you've got you know, you're moving it up the layers here, so you will do some transformations into the silver, and then you've got the gold layer, which may be the presentation that then Power BI displays from the back of that. There is some talk of a platinum layer, which obviously if you're talking in Databricks world, they might talk around that. Securing data. So obviously I want to talk about a little about security. So you are using a SaaS platform. So for this, so Entra or everyone else will know it as AAD. We've renamed it our marketing team. You're talking about going through the web. So Entra, if you've seen this, is multi-factor authentication on your phone and things like that. It's about security. So, you know, Fabric has got full security around that. You know, you've already got some of your data using SaaS products already. So whether you're using Google or ServiceNow, just think, Fabric being very similar, how that's set up. So this is no different. It is a bit different from your on-prem where you're creating your VNets and things like that. So there's going to be some conversations probably with security around how does that work and getting your head around like a modern data architecture for implementing this. And just a few more bits on Entra, but I know I'm running out of time, so I'm going to get in trouble. There's a blog, if you've not seen it. I know somebody printed one of these off to go on a flight. It was 30 pages long. So going to give you a lot of information on a monthly basis. So it's a bit like the Power BI, but a lot more information. Some learning notes, just quickly. So there's a blog post on the Fabric Career Hub. I think Kim Mannis released that last week or this week. There's a certification on Fabric. So if you've not seen it, DP600 has come out. You can register for the exam. If you do this Cloud Skills Challenge underneath and you complete it within 30 days, you get 50% off the exam. So if you're lucky that your company pays for it, you can save your money company, or if you've got to do it yourself, then you can get 50% off the exam. It's in beta, so unlike other Microsoft exams at the moment, you do it, you don't get the results at the end. It will be between 4 and 6 weeks, maybe afterwards, that the results, they'll do a bell curve, work out whether the answers are right and things like that. So if you do it in beta, hence why we're doing discounts on it. We want people to take it to see whether we've got the exam pitched at the right level. SQL Bits. Have people heard of SQL Bits? Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully people are attending SQL Bits. I know Johnny's probably going to be, no, Johnny's not shaking his head. He's not going this year. Oh, what a shame. I think Chris, you're going to be there. I think I'm going to be there for a couple of days. There's a workshop, Fabric Analytics Engineer Workshop. Mark Price Mayer is running that with another one of the, is it Cats? It's Bradley Ball, I think. 5 minutes to go. You can go and do that on one of the days. So that's on Tuesday. There are discounts available. I'm hoping Alex has got a discount code. If he hasn't got one, we'll try and get you one to get some money off. Other places to learn, Guy in a Cube. Hopefully everyone knows Guy in a Cube. There's Synapse Expresso sort of talks as well, which talk about some of the Fabric experiences. There's lots of other ones in there. So we've got some partners. I'm going to be very careful. I've named a few on here. There are many out there. Johnny's is on there, so it's all right. So we've got Engine, Advancing Analytics, and Simpsons are doing lots with Fabric. So go online, search for those guys. They've done lots of intros about how to use Fabric. Other things. I put this one on here for you, Chris. Project Sophia. Go and look up Project Sophia. So this is something that's in the modern workspace, but this is what maybe Copilot should be, or things like that. Maybe, we'd like go and have a look at it. It's quite an interesting one. The Copilot experience is slightly different. So it's actually, you can throw data and data sets in there and you can ask questions of it. Quite a good project if you want to use it, get quick answers and things like that. And there's also Power BI Explore. It's another thing that I found. If you've not seen that, that's another tool in the web about engaging with your data and building stuff out the back of it. So definitely 2 things I wanted to do. Anything else? The happy paths, they're on here. So if I send Alex the things, you'll get a link to the happy path. And that's it.